If you've walked the long road of raising children, you already know fatherhood tests a man like little else. You've likely had moments where you said something sharp, something careless, thinking it was just a passing comment. But the older we get, the more we realize words are never just words. They stay. Sometimes they leave a mark we never intended, echoing long after the moment has passed. As Marcus Aurelius once said, what we do now echoes in eternity. And for fathers, nothing echoes louder or longer than the words we speak to our children. Every sentence we offer them has weight. It can be a shield they carry through life, or a wound they spend years trying to heal. An intelligent parent understands this. He knows that language shapes not only the child standing in front of him, but the man or woman that child will one day become. A careless word can harden the heart. A wise word can build it strong. Today, we'll talk about 7 things intelligent parents never say and the better words we can choose instead. Because the legacy we leave isn't just in what we do, it's in what we say and how we say it. The first unintelligent statement, because I said so. I'll be honest with you. There were plenty of times in my years as a father when I was tempted to fall back on this phrase after a long day, when your back aches and your patience is running thin. It's the easiest way to end an argument. And for a moment, it works. It gives you the silence you think you need. But as I've gotten older, and I've had time to reflect on the kind of father I've been, I've come to understand that, because I said so, is a phrase that intelligent parents learn to leave behind. It's not because we're soft. It's not because we're afraid to be the authority in the home. It's because, with experience, you come to realize something deeper. When we pull rank and give no explanation, we may win the moment, but we lose the lesson. And if there's one thing Stoicism teaches us, it's that we don't live for the moment, we live for the legacy. As Marcus Aurelius said, what we do now echoes in eternity. And the words we speak to our children, especially when we're tired, especially when we're tested, are part of that echo. Psychologists have long said that when we shut down a child's question with a command, we're not just closing the conversation, we're closing a door in their development. We're teaching them not to think for themselves, not to ask why things are the way they are, and not to trust their own reasoning. But intelligent parents, Stoic parents, know that reason is what shapes character. If we want our children to one day lead themselves wisely, we need to teach them why we make the choices we do. I've found that when I take a moment to explain the reasoning behind my decisions, I open the door to something better than obedience. I open the door to understanding. Instead of telling my daughter she couldn't take the car out at night and leaving it at that, I'd explain it was because the roads are less safe after dark and because she has responsibilities the next morning that deserve her full energy. Over time, she stopped arguing. She started making decisions that reflected not my rules, but her own judgment. And isn't that the point of fatherhood? Not to raise followers who obey the letter of our law, but to raise thinkers who understand the spirit of wisdom. The Stoic father doesn't bark orders, he leads by example. He guides with clarity and patience, knowing that reason is the foundation of self-control. Because I said so may silence the noise for now, but it leaves the lesson undone. And a man who has lived long enough knows that what we leave unfinished in our children will echo long after we're gone. So, we choose to teach not for compliance, but for their growth. That's what intelligent parenting looks like. That's the Stoic way. Number 2, stop crying. Be tough. If you are a man over 45, you probably grew up hearing this line more times than you can count. Stop crying. Be tough. Somewhere along the way, someone told you that emotions were a liability, that a man who shows his feelings, who lets his guard down even for a moment, is weaker for it. And maybe you believed them. Maybe you've even repeated those same words to your own kids, not because you wanted to hurt them, but because you thought you were teaching them how to survive a world that isn't always kind. But there comes a time when a man has to sit with the lessons he's passed on. And if you've lived long enough, you start to understand that what we thought was strength was sometimes just silence. Stoicism teaches self-mastery, not emotional suppression. Marcus Aurelius didn't tell himself to feel nothing. He taught himself to feel deeply and act wisely. There's a difference. Strength isn't in pretending the feeling doesn't exist. Strength is feeling it fully, understanding it, and then choosing how to respond. Modern psychology agrees with the old Stoic wisdom. Studies show that children who are encouraged to express their emotions without judgment grow into adults with higher emotional intelligence. They learn to manage themselves, they develop empathy, and they become more resilient, not less. When we tell a child to stop crying, we're not teaching toughness, we're teaching them to doubt their feelings, to push them down, and to believe that vulnerability is a problem rather than a part of being human. An emotionally intelligent parent, one who walks the Stoic path, chooses differently. He acknowledges the emotion, guides his child through it, and teaches the tools of understanding and mastery, not by shutting the emotion down, but by showing them how to move through it without being consumed by it. I found it far more powerful to approach these moments with clarity and presence. Rather than telling my child to toughen up, I ask them what's behind their tears. We talk about it, and then we talk about what comes next, what they can do with those feelings, how they can act with wisdom. And over time, I've watched them grow not softer, but stronger, not reckless with their feelings, but measured and clear. Stoic strength isn't about holding back tears. It's about holding your center. We raise sons and daughters to master their emotions by first allowing them to feel them. And by doing so, we raise not just tough kids, but wise adults, the kind of people this world needs more of. And as men who have lived long enough to know the cost of silence, we choose to teach them better. That's the Stoic way. That's intelligent parenting. Number 3, you never do anything right. If you're a father or even a grandfather, you know the weight of words. And if you've lived long enough, you probably carry a few that you wish you could take back. I know I do. There was a time years ago when my youngest son, David, was helping me fix the fence out back. He was maybe 10 years old at the time, eager, but clumsy, and I was tired after a long week. I handed him a hammer, and after a few swings, he bent 3 nails and dropped the 4th in the dirt. Without thinking, I said it. You can't do anything right. I'll never forget the way he froze, looking down at the ground like he dropped more than just the nail. That one sentence crushed him in a way I didn't see fully until much later. He finished the job, quiet as a shadow, and I carried the weight of that moment long after the fence was mended. Looking back, I realized what I had done. I wasn't correcting a mistake. I was attacking his confidence. That's the thing about a phrase like, "You never do anything right." It doesn't fix behavior. It brands the child. And no matter how tough a man thinks he's being, those words carve deep. Stoicism teaches us to lead with reason and discipline, not frustration. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to be strict with yourself and tolerant with others. I had failed at both. Psychologists tell us that when we shame children instead of guiding them, we turn a moment for learning into a wound they carry. And I saw it firsthand. David hesitated to help after that day. He second-guessed himself, even when he was doing things he was good at. I had made one careless comment and shaped his view of himself, at least for a while. But Stoicism also teaches that we aren't trapped by the mistakes we make. We can correct them. Over time, I made a point to invite David back into those kinds of projects. I explained what I was doing, showed him how to use the tools, and when he struggled, I praised his effort rather than focusing on the outcome. Slowly, his confidence came back. He stopped hanging his head. He learned, and I did too. An intelligent parent separates the child from the behavior. Correct the mistake, not the person. A bent nail isn't a broken character. And a child who's given the dignity to fail gracefully becomes an adult who can stand tall through life's harder lessons. That's the Stoic way, not to wound with words, but to guide with wisdom. And when we get it wrong, as we all do, we correct ourselves first. Then we lead them forward quietly, steadily, with reason. Number 4, you're just like you're. If you're a parent, especially a father who's walked through a few decades of life, you've probably caught yourself comparing your child to someone else. It happens faster than we realize. Maybe they've disappointed you, pushed back one too many times, or made a mistake you've seen before, and out slips the phrase, "You're just like your uncle," or "You're acting like your mother," or "That's exactly what your brother does." It feels like a statement of fact in the moment. But if you've ever been on the receiving end of that kind of judgment, you already know it's not just a passing comment. It can leave a mark that lasts much longer than you'd expect. As fathers, we carry the responsibility of shaping how our children see themselves. When we compare them to someone else, especially someone we don't hold in high regard, we're not giving them feedback on their behavior. We're branding them with an identity they didn't ask for. And once a child starts to believe they're nothing more than a reflection of someone else's failures, they start to live into that story. Stoic philosophy teaches us to lead by example, not comparison. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." If someone wronged you, don't become like them. If someone let you down, rise above it. Intelligent parents take this wisdom to heart. They understand that each child is an individual, not a shadow of someone else's past mistakes. And if we're going to guide them, we need to speak to who they are, not who they aren't. Psychologists tell us that comparisons like these don't inspire change, they breed resentment. They chip away at a child's self-esteem and create unnecessary competition or shame. Over time, this undermines their individuality and confidence. I've seen it happen. Kids who feel like they're constantly being measured against a sibling or an absent parent eventually stop trying to be better. They start believing they're already boxed in. As Stoic fathers, we practice self-mastery first. That means holding back the easy comparisons and taking a longer view. What does this child need to grow into his own skin? How can I guide her toward becoming who she is meant to be, not who I wish she was? Instead of comparing them to someone else, we recognize and nurture their unique strengths and character. I've found more growth happens when I focus on calling out what makes my children different in a good way, encouraging their strengths, guiding their weaknesses, but always reinforcing that their worth isn't tied to anyone else's path. That's how we raise independent, resilient men and women. The Stoic way is not about judgment. It's about clarity, about seeing things as they are and working with them patiently, steadily, and with wisdom. And when it comes to parenting, that means we see our children for who they are, not who they remind us of. That's intelligent parenting. That's leadership by example, and it lasts. Number 5, I don't have time right now. If you've been on this earth for more than 45 years, you know this truth. Time is the one thing you can't get back. We often spend our younger years thinking we have plenty of time to make things right, to slow down, to be more present. But one day, we wake up and realize the years slipped through our fingers while we were busy doing other things. And it's often the people who needed us most who noticed the silence. There's an old friend of mine, Sam, who worked hard his whole life to build his business from nothing. He was the kind of man who believed providing for his family meant long hours, miss dinners, and weekends at the office. Every time his daughter asked him to throw a ball in the backyard, or his son asked him to watch a school play, he'd say, "I don't have time right now." And in his mind, he didn't. There were deals to close, deadlines to hit. He always told himself there would be time later. Later never came. His kids grew up, moved out, and one day, as he sat at his retirement party, surrounded by old co-workers, he realized the people he had worked so hard for weren't there. I remember him telling me, with a far-off look in his eye, "I was always too busy for 5 minutes, and now I've got all the time in the world, but they're too busy for me." There's a weight in those words, a kind of regret that settles into the bones. The Stoics remind us that time is our most precious resource. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." We waste it thinking tomorrow will be a better time, that there's a future version of ourselves who will have the space to say yes. But intelligent parents, those who live by principle and wisdom, understand that the only time we have is right now. Children don't remember what we bought them. They remember whether we were there, whether we sat down and listened when they wanted to talk about something that seemed small to us, but was everything to them, whether we looked them in the eye when they needed to feel they mattered. The Stoic father knows that presence is not about grand gestures. It's in the small moments we often overlook. 5 minutes now means more than an hour later. And if we're not careful, we'll find ourselves with all the time in the world, but no one left to spend it with. So, we put down the phone. We step away from the desk. We make time not because it's convenient, but because it's necessary. That's intelligent parenting. That's living in line with what matters, and it makes all the difference. Number 6, you should be more like. Did you know that studies have shown children who are frequently compared to others are more likely to develop feelings of inadequacy and low self-esteem well into adulthood? It's not just a fleeting sting they feel in the moment. It's a message they internalize, one that can shape their confidence and sense of self for years to come. And for those of us who have walked a little further down life's path, we know how long it can take to undo those beliefs if they ever get undone at all. As fathers, we've all had those moments. We see our children struggling in an area where someone else excels, a cousin who gets straight A's, a neighbor's kid who's a star athlete, and we're tempted to point out how things could be better if only they were more like. But that comparison, even if meant to motivate, doesn't inspire growth. It casts a shadow. And no child can thrive in someone else's shadow. The Stoics teach us to focus on the self. Marcus Aurelius never advised comparing yourself to another man. He urged self-reflection and self-improvement. He reminded himself daily that he was responsible for his own character. As fathers, our role is to help our children become the best version of themselves, not a copy of someone else. When you say, "You should be more like your brother," or "Why can't you be more like your cousin?" you're not encouraging them to rise. You're telling them they've already fallen short. And they hear that. They may not respond immediately, but inside, they feel the weight of it. Over time, those comparisons erode individuality and cultivate resentment, not just toward the person they're compared to, but toward themselves. I've seen this happen. 2 brothers I knew growing up. One the golden boy, the other always in his shadow. Every report card was compared. Every success weighed on different scales. The younger brother spent his youth trying to outrun a version of someone else's success. And when he couldn't, he stopped trying altogether. The intelligent parent learns to look at their child as they are, not who they wish them to be. They encourage strengths and help guide them through weaknesses, but always with respect for their individual path. Seneca wrote, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." But those trials should be their own, not someone else's expectations placed upon them. Our children aren't projects, they're people, unique in ways we often can't see yet. Intelligent parenting means trusting that process, guiding them without the shadow of comparison. And that's where their true potential lies, not in imitation, but in authenticity. That's the Stoic way. And it's the kind of parenting that lasts. Number 7, I'm disappointed in you. There are few words that weigh more on a child's heart than I'm disappointed in you. It sounds harmless, even righteous. After all, isn't it a parent's job to express disappointment when a child strays from the path? But if you've stood on both sides of that phrase, you know it cuts deeper than it should. And sometimes it wounds a place that's hard to heal. Years ago, I saw this happen to a man I deeply respected, a hard-working father of 3 who built his family's life from scratch. He wasn't one for grand speeches, but he believed in doing what was right. His son came home one day having made a bad choice, nothing irreversible, but enough to leave the family shaken. And in his frustration, that father sat him down and said, I'm disappointed in you. It was quiet, but it echoed. That boy carried it around like a stone in his pocket. Years later, even as a man, he talked about that moment like it was yesterday, not because he disagreed, but because he felt his father had condemned him, not the decision he made. And that's a weight few sons or daughters shake off easily. Intelligent fathers know better now. They understand the difference between addressing an action and condemning a person. Stoic philosophy teaches us to focus on what can be corrected. Marcus Aurelius didn't spend his life brooding over men's failures. He sought to lead them to better action through reason. Seneca wrote, "A good character, once established, is not easily overthrown. But that character has to be cultivated with patience, not crushed under disappointment." When we say we're disappointed in them, we tie their worth to our approval. We risk making their entire identity about one mistake. But the Stoic father separates the deed from the person. He teaches accountability without branding shame. He says, this action wasn't right, not, you are wrong. As a man who has made his own mistakes and corrected them, you already know how important that distinction is. We grow best when we are corrected with clarity, not condemned with judgment. And our children are no different. If you want to raise someone strong, someone capable of bearing life's burdens with resilience, you hold them accountable in a way that leaves their dignity intact. They need correction, yes, but they also need to believe they are still worthy of respect, love, and belief in their potential. Intelligent parenting isn't about perfection. It's about practicing wisdom in the hard moments. It's about leading your child calmly back to the better part of themselves without making them feel they've lost your trust completely. Because one day, they'll remember what you said when they stumbled, and that memory will either be the thing that lifts them or keeps them down. The Stoic father chooses carefully, not out of weakness, but out of strength, love, and reason. And that makes all the difference. We're not raising children to simply follow rules. We're raising future men and women who will one day guide themselves long after we're gone. And they will carry the weight or the wisdom of what we've told them. Marcus Aurelius said, "What we do now echoes in eternity." That includes the words we choose, especially when we're tired or tested. Intelligent fathers know that what we say today shapes who they become tomorrow. I would love to hear about your journey and triumphs. Please hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and leave a comment below to share your story, your successes, and even the challenges you've overcome. So, if you're ready to speak with intention, calm, clear, and steady, write in the comments, "I choose wisdom." Because the legacy we leave isn't built in grand gestures. It's built in moments like these, quiet words, careful guidance, and strength tempered by compassion. That's the Stoic way, and it's a legacy worth leaving.